Welcome to this explainer. Let's jump right in. Think about how often you hear someone say, well, they meant well, or, hey, my intentions were good. We've been told forever that if your heart's in the right place, you're acting ethically, right? But honestly, in our crazy, complex modern world, good intentions just aren't going to cut it anymore.
Think about this. If a strict rule says never lie, but telling the truth in a specific situation is going to cause massive, real-world harm to someone else, what's the actual right move? Is it more ethical to just act like a machine and apply the rule blindly, or do we have a duty to analyze the fallout? Today, we're really going to challenge the idea that just following the rules is always the most ethical choice.
So, here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll go beyond good intentions. Then we'll climb the 3 rungs of our metaphorical ladder. Rung 1 is immediate consequences. Rung 2 is the unborn future, and rung 3 is the ecosystem. Finally, we'll bring it all together in the responsibility ladder.
All right, part 1. Beyond good intentions. Why meaning well isn't enough.
Let's dive into the core definition of responsibility ethics. The big mental shift here is realizing that ethical decisions aren't just this private matter between you and your conscience. You really have to look outward. You've got to consider the actual, tangible consequences of your actions, and not just for the person standing right in front of you, but for society, for nature, and even for the future. Basically, you carry the weight of the outcome, not just your starting intentions.
The sociologist Max Weber originally laid this out perfectly. He contrasted 2 mindsets. On one side, you've got the ethic of conviction. This is super idealistic. It's all about principles, like, I always tell the truth no matter what happens. But on the other side is the ethic of responsibility. This is realistic, it's prudent. The central question completely shifts to what effects will my action actually have? It's the difference between saying, I always tell the truth, and I tell the truth, but I carefully consider the impact first.
Moving on to our first rung on the ladder, immediate consequences, which is based on Max Weber's principle.
Weber argued something absolutely crucial. I am responsible not only for what I intend, but also for what my action produces. Especially in professional life and leadership, you own the real-world effects of your decisions. You literally don't get a free pass just because you didn't mean for something bad to happen. If you just apply a rule without measuring its impact, you're failing the test of responsibility ethics. You are tethered to the results.
Let's ground this in a real scenario. Imagine you're a university teacher, and you find out a group of students cheated. The pure ethic of conviction says, rule broken, 0 for all, end of story. It's automatic, right? But applying responsibility ethics means you have to pause. You have to consider the context, the exact consequences, basic fairness, and the ultimate educational impact before you make that call. Automatically applying the rule is easy, but analyzing the consequences, that requires a lot more thought, and frankly, a lot more humanity.
Let's step up to the next rung. Rung 2, the unborn future, looking at Hans Jonas and the modern age.
So, philosopher Hans Jonas takes Weber's idea and massively expands the timeline. He argues that our incredible modern technological power means we don't just affect the present day anymore. We affect the future of humanity and the planet itself. Because future generations are entirely vulnerable to the choices we make today, our responsibility has to be anticipatory. We have to look ahead. We must use prudence to avoid actions that could cause serious, irreversible harm down the line. We are literally looking out for people who aren't even born yet.
Put yourself in the shoes of a tech developer for a second. Let's say an AI company builds this brilliant education software that completely revolutionizes learning right now, but it secretly collects vast amounts of personal data from kids. Should we just blindly accept that innovation because it's useful today? Jonas would say absolutely not. We have to weigh that short-term utility against the long-term risks to privacy, autonomy, and the burden placed on future students.
And this leads to Jonas's ultimate imperative. We must act so that our actions do not destroy the conditions of life for future generations. That is anticipatory responsibility in a nutshell. You aren't just on the hook for the immediate fallout. You're responsible for making sure the stage is still set for life to thrive long, long after you're gone.
That brings us to our final step. Rung 3, the ecosystem, focusing on ecological ethics. Ecological ethics challenges us to look at the moral relationship between humans, nature, animals, ecosystems, and future generations. The massive paradigm shift here is realizing that nature has intrinsic moral value. It's not just some endless economic resource or a tool for us to consume. It demands respect for what it is. We're moving from a completely human-centric view to a life-centric view.
Consider a scenario like this. A university decides to slash its entire recycling program just to save a few bucks in the short term. Sure, it looks great on this year's budget, but can that institution truly call itself ethical or claim to be preparing future professionals if it totally ignores its environmental responsibility? While saving money might seem responsible to an accountant today, the long-term waste and the ultimate cost to the ecosystem directly contradicts true social responsibility.
Ecological ethics forces us to focus on these long-term consequences. We're talking about heavy issues here: pollution, climate change, the tragic loss of biodiversity, and deforestation. When a company dumps waste into a river for a quick economic win, the executives in the boardroom might not feel the effects immediately, but those actions silently and devastatingly affect the most vulnerable communities out there, and eventually the Earth itself.
All right, let's synthesize all of this. Section 5, the responsibility ladder, bringing it all together. Notice how beautifully this integrating idea scales up our ethical duty. Step 1 starts with Weber. I'm responsible for the foreseeable consequences of my decisions right now. Step 2 expands with Jonas. I'm responsible even for the consequences that affect those who aren't yet born, especially given the power of our tech. And Step 3 blossoms into ecological ethics. I'm responsible for the consequences my actions generate in nature, ecosystems, and all future life. It scales perfectly from our immediate circle outward to the entire planet. When you compare these philosophies side by side, you see this amazing expansion of duty. Weber focuses heavily on politics, leadership, and professional decisions, basically asking, what consequences does my action produce right now? Jonas then shifts the focus to technology and humanity's future, asking, what consequences will my action have for future generations? And finally, ecological ethics broadens to the environment and sustainability, asking, what consequences will my action have on nature and life in the long term?
The really cool thing is that these aren't isolated, competing theories at all. They form a deeply interconnected ecosystem of ethical thinking. Whether you're a teacher weighing a punishment, a company making a cheap product with a high social cost, a tech developer scraping personal data, or an institution looking for short-term savings, you are operating within this framework. Weber, Jonas, and ecological ethics all intertwine to guide how we should make decisions today.
Which brings us to this general conclusion. A professional with responsibility ethics not only follows rules, but also thinks carefully about the human, social, technological, and environmental impact of their actions today and in the future. Good intentions are just the starting line, not the finish line. Basic compliance is just following the rules. True ethical responsibility means doing the hard work of thinking through the ripple effects of what you do.
So I want to leave you with a provocative question. As you step away from this explainer and back into the complexity of your own life, ask yourself, how will you weigh the human, social, technological, and environmental impacts of your actions today? Are you just going to apply the rules automatically, or will you climb the ladder of responsibility? The future is literally waiting on your answer.